to introduce Anna Julia Di Lisio. She's an activist and researcher based in Argentina, and she's going to talk to you about the effects of self-ID in Argentina.
I started my presentation showing how the evolution of men happened in Argentina, going from gaucho to queer macho. And if you see, there's a very small question and the women. So we have the law, the ID law since 2012. And before I answer to the question, when and how was this law enacted in my country, I would like to give you like a brief context about Argentina, which is a very unequal country. I said that in the past years, it went from a macho culture to a queer macho one, because with this law, they tried to hide all the negative things about the macho culture, like misogyny, under this glitter carpet, where men are glorified because they are not afraid to use makeup or clothes like dresses. In Argentina, the oppression of women is very strong, and it is also combined with class and color oppressions. The money and the power is concentrated in the big cities, mainly Buenos Aires. And in the rest of the country, people are more isolated. This means that they have less to say in politics. To illustrate this, 40 to 60% of the population live in poverty or extreme poverty in Argentina. The self-ID law was approved on May 2012. I would also suggest that there is a similarity with the Irish case, because in 2010, similar proposals for the ID law were presented together with the matrimonio igualitario, which is the same-sex marriage. This law was presented by the center-left Christina Kirchner party. You can see her on the picture also giving out the new IDs for these autogynephilic men. And although in reality it is a very neoliberal party, but also the only party that achieves to structure some kind of social system to support the big poor population. This creates a recurrent circle where people need to stick to this party because there's no other option for them. There is extreme political fanatism that can only be challenged by the right wing and conservatives. The law was introduced in the most deceitful way, as we know it happens all the time, and it was supported also by the NGO called GATE, which was created in 2009, but the same NGO is the one organized in Spain, for example, to go very openly against radical feminists and women's movements. Since Argentina was the first country to introduce such a law in the world, it was very hard to imagine the magnitude of the harm it could cause as well. So what effects of self-ID have I seen on women's and girls' rights and spaces? So here I collected a couple of pictures where you can see that it's mainly about men. The pictures with Spanish words are publicity from the government pushing for prostitution, but I will get back to that in a moment. So since the self-ID law has been enacted in the countries like Canada, Sweden, and Argentina, the femicide rates result in 3 times higher than in the countries with similar structures or qualities without these laws. The state has programs to indoctrinate the population, from the media and the newspapers to infiltrating in universities, but also they arrange visits to companies to give talks about the gender ideology, how inclusivity should be, and what we should do to comply with the ID law. There is a regulation institution called INADI. They were created to act on discrimination, but now they are mainly focusing on misgendering cases. But INADI seems not to have anything to say about the lesbians being erased from the LGBT spaces. Lesbians are totally silenced, and the only way for them to exist or to even be accepted in the society is to adopt a male gender identity. The LGBT community is mainly about drag queens and gays or any other man with different gender identities. They keep using LGBT, but in reality should be only GT, since lesbians are not even shown anywhere. These men from the GT are also pushing for spaces like toilets without gender. For this reason, the construction companies in Argentina, like architects, added to their specialties multi-gender toilets for public places like universities and malls. I get a lot of emails from women telling me that they have to create secret accounts to follow radical feminist accounts like mine, where I show very raw content about different cases of autogynephilia. And this made it very clear to me that women in Argentina are living in a de facto totalitarian gender ideology regime, where saying anything different than the gender ideology can make them lose their jobs, their friends, turn them into a social pariah. So here in this photo, what I'm trying to show is this is like a regular ads about women, let's say, yeah, women's underwear, where you see in the center of the photo, there are 3 men with the red circles. You can imagine what I mean with this photo, but the reason I want to show this photo to you is because you see on the side, the other photo, the man is very close to the woman with his genitals. So you have to imagine someone getting finally a job to be photographed, and then you get to the set, and then this is what you find, right? You have to be smiling while you have the male genitals close to you, or even thrusting you or touching you, etc. Since the ID law has been pushed by the same current government years ago, they have been focusing always on the next points of the neoliberal gender agenda. And what is currently happening is that prostitution is being publicized on the open TV channel that belongs to the state called TV Pública. This is happening while Argentina is an abolitionist country since 1936. They made TV spots and big campaigns to promote the legalization of prostitution. They are in the photos. For example, you can see how they are modifying the flag to add the red umbrella. And what you see on the other corner of the photo is AMAR, which is the organization pushing for prostitution very aggressively in Argentina. What you can also see in the black and white pictures is that 80% of these people pushing for prostitution in Argentina are men dressed as women. Then comes Fundación Huésped, which is another ally in this agenda against women. They used to be a foundation to fight against AIDS, and now they are a fully functional branch office of the gender politic lobby. They offer hormone treatments with misleading information. They manage and coordinate the different surgeries, and they also assist minors in case their parents oppose to the transition. They connect the minors with dedicated lawyers so the minor could access to the transition in despite of the parents' opposition. Like it happened in other countries, the AIDS Foundation is also linked with the surrogacy agenda. They have lobbyists pushing especially for these laws in different world organizations. And what is interesting to find is that they claim to have a feminist dedicated lobbyist that happens to be actually a gay man pushing for more rights for men to access to women's reproductive capacities. And there you can see him. Dumiso is a feminist human rights defender. So their link with the prostitution lobby is because, like in Uruguay, the Argentinian government wants to have prostitution regulated, and that the women being exploited would be controlled by the AIDS Foundation by a sanitary booklet, where clients and pimps could see that these women are healthy. Fundación Huésped receives investment from the European Bank, the World Health Organization, UNICEF, National Institute of Health from the US, the World Bank, among others. Here you can see the femicides rates for 2019, how the government, this is the official, how the government presented this. So it's not a flyer about some party, it's not a flyer about some LGTB celebration, are the numbers of women being killed. So I wanted to show you exactly how it looks. So I have a I have the feeling that there is a big intention in minimizing how bad this is for women in Argentina. Then what happens with the statistics in self-ID? Between 2013 and 2018, over 500,000 cases of violence against women were reported. Between 2013 and 2019, there were 2,749 femicides. That makes 459 women per year being murdered. That is more than one woman per day. In a population of between 42 and 44 million, it is almost 0.1% of the total population of a country. This law represents a big issue for the analysis of crimes and prevention, because if we mix the crimes committed by men and women, it will make it harder to prevent them and solve them. For example, 98% of the psychopaths turn out to be men, and 80% of the crimes are committed by men. The fact of not being able to have the correct information about who is committing the crimes makes it harder to try to prevent them and protect the society. In Argentina, there is very little or almost no information about what happens with women, for example, sharing jails with men identified as women. We get news from time to time from very small papers or online portals, but not more. The Ministry of Interior does not distinguish between women and men that have a female identity document. So like in Canada, it is really hard to hear about these cases and to follow up on the safety of the women in jails. The last report of the National Prison Attorney from 2018 starts dividing the prisoners into cis women, trans and lesbians, but later on, all the information is mixed and they name women to refer to men as well. We used to have a ministry dedicated to the violence against women, but since the law, it turned into the Ministry of Diversity and a bunch of other identities, as you can see in the photo. So the focus at the moment of this entity is to help travestites to have children, and they show them as mothers. They also interview them to gaslight the society into accepting this. The gays buying babies through surrogacy are much more accepted and even celebrated in the society than single mothers. Here you can see the spot of this travestite. It has been shown by the ministry as something positive, that he's a mother and that motherhood doesn't affect him much in his daily life. We know why. So then coming to the next question, what is happening with children and this law? And yes, there is indoctrination everywhere and in every layer of a society. There are campaigns from the government to push for this agenda in different formats, like going to schools to have talks with the students. This does not only apply to minors, but also teenagers starting university. There is a law called ESI that was designed to help schools and teachers with the sex education or sexual education, especially because due to the religion and the society being so conservative, the sex education was null or very poor. They also took the chance to infiltrate the trans agenda using this law as well. I have the feeling that kids do not really have a free choice to express themselves or choose what they want to be in life. And to the last question, who opposes this whole thing in Argentina? I want you to know that being in opposition to this law is being compared to being on the side of the military coup of 1976, where they kidnapped, killed and disappeared 30,000 people during the Operation Condor, where they stole the children of the prisoners and gave them to different families. This is a very fresh event in the Argentinian memory, since we are still looking for those kids that now are grown-ups. Although over 200 kids were given their real identity back, thanks to the Madres y Abuelas de Plaza de Mayo, that stands for Mothers and Grandmothers of Plaza de Mayo, these women got their children disappeared, desaparecidos. When their families would go to claim for them to the police, they were told that their sons and daughters were not dead, nor in jail, they were just disappeared with no identity, that they could not do anything else. And in the middle of the military coup, surrounded by extreme fear and in curfews, the mothers and the grandmothers of the disappeared students started walking calmly in circles once a week, right in front of the Casa Rosada, which is the government's house. They wore white handkerchiefs over their heads, and they just kept on walking in circles every week in peace until they became a force. The government that was on these women's side later on was the same one presenting the self-ID law. This is why it's so hard to go against this, because this government is the one that pushed for this law of identity. They mix this kind of lost children or robbed children with the identity. For this reason, this party is considered the Human Rights Party, since it was the only party that faced the militaries and took them to court. In terms of feminism, it is completely infiltrated and taken. In the feminist assemblies, men can't be denied to participate, even though there were some episodes where these men harmed and pushed and punched and pushed the women. So this is roughly the situation in Argentina.